Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Awaken Out of Context podcast, where we explore the thoughts and ideas of extraordinary thinkers and performers. My guest today is Dr. Rachel Taylor. She's a self-described neuroscientific truth teller on a mission to create a better and kinder world, one brain at a time. Dr. Taylor is not only the creator of the Unbroken podcast, but also a world-renowned expert in the field of autism. Dr. Rachel and I explore a wide range of topics, including eugenics and genetic therapy, the brain-altering effects of loneliness, what it means to be neurodivergent, the vital role of secure infant attachment, Rachel's psychedelic experience with ayahuasca, how it feels to vomit up capitalism, plus numerous additional insights. Please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Rachel Taylor.
Apparently I was like rubbing my hands in the vomit and then rubbing it on poor Bob. Poor Bob, I was rubbing it on him.
I thought we'd start by asking, what's your favourite part of the brain?
Ooh, my favourite part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. Do you want to know why?
Yes, I would love to know why.
Because that is what sets us apart from other animals. That's our gift. That are the sort of the wonderful collection of all the nuclei and the pathways that are there. It's where we have insight. It's where we can reason. It's where we can problem solve. It's where we can have critical thought processes. And I actually have, I wrote a love letter to the prefrontal cortex because I wanted everybody to know that what I'm seeing in recent times is that everybody's working for the limbic system, which is my least favorite part of the brain. I'm aware you didn't ask me that question, but I'll throw that in there.
Is the limbic system, is that the it's the one at the bottom? Oh
no, that's the basal ganglia.
Right, okay.
So the limbic system is all around here, and it basically the amygdala is there, so it's like a fear center. Well, it sort of filters for all emotion, but we have a negative bias, so it's especially programmed for fear. The hippocampus, so memory storage there, and that's really interesting because the memories that are in our hippocampus often have emotions attached to them to make it easier to think, oh, what happens next? Sure. So yeah, and the limbic system really, all mammals have a limbic system, and this is like where your primal urges and where literally when we're animalistic and we're reacting instead of, and the thing is like you can respond from the prefrontal cortex because you can think of an appropriate response. You react from the limbic system. The limbic system works a lot quicker, a lot faster than the prefrontal cortex, so often you will get an immediate reaction to something, which in hindsight might not necessarily be what you want it to be later. It's like, oh, why did I do that?
So I suppose if you wanted to see how the limbic system works, you could just drink 5 pints.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
I wouldn't know anything about
see how
that.
It works. Just go out on a Friday night and just sit in a corner and observe.
Yeah.
Be an observational scientist.
Yeah. Just go down one of the strips and observe.
Observe, yeah.
I used to work in nightlife, so.
Oh yeah, you're well aware of the phenomenon that I'm talking about then.
Yeah. So how's the podcast going?
Well, really good. I've got two more interviews that I want to do with people to cover 2 strengths that one, and I'm doing a few myself, and in particular the one that I'm really wanting to get to grips on is I want to talk about post-traumatic growth, because there's been some really interesting scientific papers where they want to use genetic therapy to help people with PTSD, and I'm from an ethical point of view and somebody who has complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm like thinking, I'm not sure that's the answer. I'm not sure that genetic therapy is the answer for somebody with PTSD because the environment is still the environment. And
what is genetic therapy?
Well, what they're saying is that they can make changes to protein expression so that you're not going to have problematic symptoms associated with PTSD.
Oh, wow.
So they can make changes to maybe anxiety mechanism, resilience response, the ability to maybe change memories.
So is this like almost like stem cells, but for the brain?
It wouldn't not just for the brain, but for the nervous system, and it would be looking to alter sort of the epigenetic response. So epigenetics is sort of the environmental interaction with your genetic profile, and it produces proteins from there. And the thing is, like, people have trauma. Trauma is not a disease per se. Trauma is something that happens to you, and there's so much evidence that trauma is when something has happened to you and you don't bear witness to it. So somebody hasn't said to you, this is really bad. What happened to you shouldn't have happened. You have been through a horrific time, and actually supported you through that to actually work with your body, work with your brain to get that out. Most people with PTSD are treated as if it's a mental health condition. Well, PTSD is a nervous system response based on things that have happened in your environment. And some people, it could be complex because it's gone on many, many occasions, many, many years. And for some people, they can get PTSD from seeing a horrific car accident and not being supported to process how bad that was. People have different reactions. So I really want to look at post-traumatic growth, because from a perspective as well, if somebody has PTSD, are you saying that they're broken and they need fixing because of what's happened to them? What kind of message is that giving out to people?
So what's the alternative solution?
Well, the alternative solution is that we all need to realize that the environment is increasingly toxic, and that some people need support more than others. When you've had something like that, we need more nurture, we need more care, we need more of what I say in that, you're not broken, the environment is. Most people are acting in a real normal way to an increasingly abnormal environment.
Yes.
So
it reminds me, I've got a quote here from you, actually.
I hope it's a good one.
Just talking about environment. So you said, we have to stop thinking about anxiety as being a sign that there is something wrong with us. We need to start seeing anxiety as a sign that there is something wrong with our environment. I thought that was really good.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I've done so much, done a lot of stuff on anxiety, and been through it myself, like 99% of people and the rest of it. Yeah. But I thought that was a really, when something hits you and it's really obvious.
Yeah.
Really simple, but yeah, like that could fix anything. And, I still have my bouts, but I've got it under control these days. And, there might be people at work or whatever, and you can see them suffering with it. And it's kind of just like, just take a step back. How's your sleep? How's your caffeine intake? How's your daylight? How's your exercise? And it's really...
How much connection have you got? Who supports you? What doom and gloom do you watch on an everyday basis? Who feeds you fear?
Exactly. But it seems so simple once you've been through that process yourself. But when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the mud, it can be difficult, right?
Well, and this is what I'm saying. It's about, human beings are not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be. We're not an isolationist species. We're meant to be in supportive groups, and we've sort of lost the plot with that. It's like we're meant to be. We're meant to feel valued, and this is really interesting because when we sense disrespect, right, we get a stress response, and the stress response is actually sent out from the basal ganglia, so this is the bottom part of the brain. Okay. So we get that stress response to warn us that we're being disrespected. That might mean that we're going to be thrown out the group. We're not valued by the group. We don't matter to the group, and we're hardwired that we need to be in a group, because we need other people. So when people, I say stuck in the mire or stuck in the mud with anxiety, it's that you need somebody by your side who's not trying to fix you, not trying to do this, do that, do this, do that. You don't need that. You need to be accepted that this is where you are. You need, like I say, the greatest gift you can give to someone is saying, I see your pain. I'm just going to sit next to you. I've got your hand while you're in this pain. That's my gift to you. I don't need to fix you. You need to understand yourself. You need to understand how you've got to where you've got to. And that's not taking responsibility for it. That's actually being able to see your environment and put pieces together and think, oh, you know, I listened to somebody who said that I was no good, that wasn't good enough, that I was always wanting, you know, listen to that. And that's made me have a really skewed version of who I am. Or it might be, I really thought that it would be good to please that person, to put in a 16-hour day for however many days. And actually, I've just realized that that didn't matter to them at all. I'm just another number. But I thought I was special. You know, there's so many different avenues that can cause somebody to be in pain. And what we need a friend to sit next to us and say, I see your pain. I accept you. I love you. I'm not going to try and fix you. I'm just going to sit with you as you are right now. And then whatever you need, I'm going to help to provide. That's what we should do.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, right?
Yeah, it's human. It's human, right?
Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying then about you know, about being out of the group and things. And I suppose that loneliness is so common now, even just being a single man, you know, and just, you know, 30-odd-year-old male. I suppose that the chimp brain, when you're having your tea on your own or whatever, and even though you're kind of all right with it, it's probably thinking, I've been kicked out of the group. Oh, well, do you know what I mean? In some way.
Yeah, it's like we naturally want to be in a group, and when we're not in one, we start thinking what's wrong with us. Naturally, we start thinking, why am I not in a group? And loneliness, social isolation is a killer, and it shifts the structure of the brain. The brain changes structure when you have been socially isolated, and socially isolated isn't going to the pub or going to the nightclub or going dancing or having fun with friends. Social isolation is when you are not in meaningful contact with other human beings.
Yeah.
And when we are socially isolated, the amygdala, my little friends in the limbic system, start to enlarge. So they start to monitor the environment more for threats and potential danger. So your attention is just diverted to things that could go wrong. And you start to be scared of the very thing that you're craving. So you're craving human contact, but you will put such a fairy tale vision of what that contact should be that it's very easy for you to reject all contact that doesn't fit this idealized version of what it should be to have human contact. So you're actually rejecting the very thing that you're craving.
Wow.
That's what the brain does when you've been socially isolated.
I'd never heard of it like that.
I aim to please.
Yeah, I'm just digesting that. Wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
It's huge, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, do you know what? I'm embarrassed to say I learned a new word this week.
I love learning new words. That's not an embarrassment.
I feel like I'm a little bit behind the curve. Neurodiverse.
Oh, yeah.
I never heard of that.
Well, you're a bit behind the curve because the new way of doing it is neurodivergent.
Well, see, I'd heard neurodivergent, but I thought I'd sound a bit cooler if I went back to the diverse.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So you were cool and you didn't even know it. You know, the divergent before the diverse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like arriving late at a party. Still got there, but you know.
Yeah. It's like, oh, they've already paired off.
So am I right? It's dyslexia, autism, ADHD,
ADD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, anything that is atypical within the brain comes under neurodiversity.
So that's what ties them together.
Yeah, and there's some arguments about some other conditions, but it's like when you speak to people who are neurodiverse, and this is really interesting in terms of autism and Asperger's, is that it was decided a few years ago that autism and Asperger's should be put together, and people with Asperger's, and I agree with them, having researched people with atypicalities, that they shouldn't be, their particular place within atypicalities was not the same as people with autism. And I kind of agree with them. But, the people who make the decisions, unfortunately, if I made the decisions, things would be a lot different. People who make the decisions decided to put those both together. But atypicalities in the brain is one of my favorite things.
Right. Okay. Are there any sort of, how do I phrase this question? Are there any new neurological traits that are more likely to co-occur? Does that make sense?
This is the thing with neurodiversity, right? Is that people who are neurodiverse are very aware that they're different. And most people who, and really interestingly, when we're talking about social isolation, is that they're really acutely aware that they might not be accepted by the group. So they will often do their best to pretend that they're not different, to mask it, to camouflage it. And that takes a serious amount of energy. So you like have people who maybe that they get too tired to do that, so they will just naturally want to be around people who are like them because they don't need to pretend. Or you'll get people, interesting, when I was doing my research, I had people with autism who couldn't stand to be around other people with autism because they couldn't mask their autism as good as they could. So therefore they were like quite disparaging, and no wonder they get in trouble, no wonder this happens to them, because they like literally like sitting ducks for society. And it was like, God, this is so interesting but so tragic at the same time.
Yeah.
I had I interviewed people, I spoke to many people, and one of the things that stuck into my mind was one person who used to go salsa dancing once a week for an hour, because everybody had to dance with everybody else, and he knew that he needed human contact through touch, and he'd written himself off that no woman would ever find him attractive. So he'd found an activity that he could do so that he could get some oxytocin from that human contact. And at the start of all the pandemic policies, I thought, how many people like him are now not getting any human contact? And that to me was criminal.
Yeah.
Absolutely criminal. So it's like, so I'm very passionate about neurodiversity. It's like my passion project. It's like I do other things as well. But my research in neurodiversity, it's the thing that it always, and I never get tired of telling the stories. I never get tired of banging that drum about what people need to be well, what people need to feel included, and how everybody should just stop taking it so personally when they cannot cope with life, so they have some sort of emotional outburst. So, it's just like we should be actually supporting these people, not feeling uncomfortable by how they're, expressing their discomfort or expressing their frustration. I think that we all need to just stop making it, just stop being so selfish, stop making it about us.
Yeah.
And start making it about other people.
Yeah, here.
I'm very passionate about the neurodiverse.
Yeah, it comes across. And let's talk about that, because obviously I don't want to assume anyone who might be listening, because you've done, it wasn't your PhD, was it your PhD? It was your PhD.
Yeah, I developed the first theory of well-being for adults with autism in the world.
Wow.
Ever. Yeah.
Okay, and what are the pillars of that? Or do you mind? Is it too difficult to go into now?
No, it's really easy. And this is the thing, is that people with autism are human beings. They don't need things dissimilar to neurotypicals, and this is a heartbreaking thing. They just need it, more of it, because of their atypicalities. So they need to have acceptance, self-acceptance, and acceptance from others. They need to have meaning, which is not purpose, but why am I here? Everybody that I spoke to about, within my research, everybody at some point had an existential crisis, which was pretty horrific. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why is it so difficult? And then there was like sort of the older ones, like, I'm not suicidal, but this is so hard. I can't wait to die. This is just so hard. So you have like sort of that meaning and the acceptance, and the backdrop of it all is environmental conditions. So it
Right.
becomes even more about, people with autism are very sensitive to heavy metals. They have very sensitive guts. They have very sensitive emotions. And I actually explored my hypothesis that they have an atypical amygdala that actually feels emotion, sort of filters it better, more sensitively than a neurotypical. So it's like literally overwhelming. It's like, what do I do with all this information? It's like everybody that spoke, it's like they could tell the mood and the atmosphere of a room before walking in it. And they wanted to save the world. They wanted to make the world a better place.
Empathic.
Yeah, extremely empathic, which is like at odds with quite a lot of other research. And I was like, no, these people, they feel emotion in such an acute way that actually it leads to burnout for them. It leads to not understanding what to do with it, because they like had so much emotional empathy, but a deficit in cognitive empathy, knowing what to do with that.
Wow.
Knowing where to take it. So the environment is huge with that. And then the golden thread pulling it all together is this social comparison theory, that they compare themselves with others far more than neurotypicals. They are constantly on high alert. They walk in and, like you were talking, we were talking about parties and stuff like that. Someone with autism will walk into a party and immediately be assessing the room. What's my role in this party? What's my role in this group? Where can I make myself useful? Where can I fit in? Where can I make myself indispensable so that I'm not going to get thrown out of this group? That's huge. That it takes so much energy. And people with autism die 15 to 20 years before neurotypicals. We're in the 21st century. That should not be happening.
Wow.
And this is why
I presume
yeah.
That's highly likely to be environmental.
It's a collection of all of it. It's well-being. It's a whole well-being is not smelly candles and fancy crystals and going to your local Buddha center. That's not well-being. Well-being is your ability to look after your body, your physical, mental, emotional body, to be able to deal with the challenges and adversity that life throws at you. And if you can't, if you have inadequate resources, if you have inadequate support, if you don't have acceptance, don't have meaning, then you're going to have wear and tear on your allostatic load. That's actually going to mean that you die before somebody who hasn't got atypicalities. It's as simple as that. And I'm not disparaging of the smelly candle, they have the place, don't they?
I love a smelly candle.
Who doesn't? Well, apparently they're not good for you, but yeah, hey, I'm not being disparaging, but what I'm saying.
Yeah, you've got to go soy.
Yeah,
go soy wax.
It's just too complex now. But it's not like somebody can, well-being, I'm autistic, I'll go and buy myself a smelly candle, that'll sort it out. No, it won't.
No.
That will not sort it out.
Do you think there are more people living with ASD now? Or is it just that because some of the stats show that, right? But is it just that we're getting better at diagnosing it?
I think that the spectrum is so wide, and I don't think the diagnostic models themselves, and the people who develop them, I'm trained to do autism diagnostics myself, and I argue and just say this is not fit for purpose. I think the diagnostic themselves are focused on very specific nuances, and I think that you have to be really careful with children, because I see a lot of children in distress who potentially could be diagnosed as autistic, when in fact they're children in distress and expressing that distress in a way that you might think is autism. But actually, when you look at how they interact in other ways, they wouldn't necessarily fit under the autistic blanket. But because in the UK, because of how we live, and because of money constraints and things like that, it'd be like that people would want to have a label for their child, because that's the only way that their child could get any kind of support. And what I'm saying is that if a child is distressed, it shouldn't really be it shouldn't be the first thing that we do is, oh, you know, let's get a diagnosis so that we can get some help. It's like, let's help all children who are distressed. Let's leave them until they are older before we're giving any kind of diagnosis. Let's see how their development progresses. Let's see how we should be kinder. We should be developing, nurturing, inclusive environments where children start to feel safer. And when I say I see children who are in distress, I see children who are unable to focus. I see children who are acting very infantile, you know, like 4 years, and they're acting like they're 2 years old. I see children who are they don't look healthy. They look a bit, you know, their eyes are not bright and they're not curious like you would expect a child to be. You know, so that's from a child perspective. It's like, I don't think we should be giving any child an atypicality badge, you know, and especially like ADHD, that blows my mind that so many children get put on medication. I find it, and this might be controversial, and I apologize to anybody who feels that I'm being unfair. I think from my perspective, and I've worked in schools and I've seen these children. Often these children, they've not got ADHD, they've got an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed till somebody's 25 anyway. If you imagine that a child is given a tablet, a smartphone, is allowed access to applications where literally the 7 seconds, that is not teaching the brain to focus. So, you know, I have a particular issue with TikTok, and I think that any parent who allows a child to go on TikTok is actually allowing that child to be abused. And I'm going to say, and I don't care if any parent falls out with me with that.
Yeah, it's pretty hideous.
TikTok especially, it leads a person down. And when I first saw it, you like looking at, oh my God, this is how people get addicted to it. And I just like look at it and it's like, how can anybody allow a child to go on this?
Did you know the whole thing about China's version of TikTok?
Yeah.
So it's all like rocket ships and and all that, and then they won't let them have our version of it.
I know it's the thing is, I know people who sort of sitting on these tech meetings and like they try to, you know, they speak with the technicians like from Instagram, or, you know, I don't like anything to do with Facebook or anything to do with like an agents of darkness. So I won't use any technology that comes under Meta, none of it. And I don't care how awkward that feels for me, and people do. It's like, oh, you're not in that WhatsApp group? No. And they'll go, oh, too many groups. No, I can't just say, oh yeah, too many groups. I have to say, no, because I'm authentic in the work that I do, and I cannot use anything that I think is psychologically damaging. And then you could just say, oh God, it kind of works. But
well, I try have a ban on groups actually for that, for a similar reason, because it brings out the worst in me and the worst in everyone else.
Yeah,
I get very sensitive.
Yeah.
And I find myself all of a sudden trying to impress or saying something, and then it usually doesn't land, and then someone will take the piss at me, and then I'll get really upset. And it's crazy.
It's that group thing again. It's just like, because how can we read you? So when you're going to communicate, and this is why I hate, like, you know, when they're, oh, it's great, we can't see people, but we can have Zoom parties. And I'm like, oh my God, that's just so bad. It's so bad, because it's like your brain needs to see that other person's nuances. You can't see the nuances through a screen. You can't see the micro expressions, and you certainly can't feel the pheromones, feel the chemicals. So it's difficult for you to know if someone's actually being sarcastic, being truthful, being fun, being playful. So it's really difficult to find those nuances, and the brain works really hard to try and get it, so you end up tireder. So
I hope we can do this in person next time.
Yeah. Yeah, especially you can see my nuances there. You can see all my nuances.
Yeah.
My micro expressions.
Yeah, it's a bit wild when you think about it after a while, and you're like, I'm just looking at pixels.
Yeah. I'm like, my partner wants to get a new TV, and I'm like, right, okay, I don't want a smart TV, right? And then you have like the you know, people, the salespeople, like looking at you as if you're stupid. Like, why would you not want a smart TV?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have people being able to access my house. Oh, I
Yeah.
just turn the internet off then. Well, they can override that. I'm not stupid. I'm a scientist. You can override that. And then I was looking at some of my pap was like, oh, look at this OLED. Isn't it amazing? I went, that's not real. It's not real.
Mm.
And I said, and this is what it's doing. It's giving a false impression and saying it's reality to people. And I said, and we know that the majority of people now don't really use a prefrontal cortex, so they'll think that's real. And then it's caused all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
And I was like, why can you not buy a TV that's not smart? Surely I'm not the only person who doesn't want GCHQ being able to go through my telly. Surely I'm not. And not because I'm up to anything dodgy, but because, you know what, I'm a human being and I deserve.
Yeah, you have the right to privacy,
Right,
don't you?
Yeah, unless they suspect that you're not kosher, and
Yeah.
then they've got the right to infiltrate, and they don't need anything too solid to do it, you know. And
Yeah,
it's just
yeah, of course.
and you know, I just think that people need to understand where we're going with technology. That just because we can doesn't mean we should.
That's
How
fair
did we
enough.
get there from neurodiversity?
I love it.
That was
I
very
love it.
diverse.
Do you know, I've got, I think I've got 2 different VPN subscriptions, and I have to admit I don't always put them on because it's just very inconvenient. And I think, oh, and then they've
And
got
that's
me.
the point. That's the point.
They've got
Yeah,
me.
that's the point. Yeah.
But yeah, just before we move off autism, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, because we were talking earlier about childhood diagnosis.
Yeah.
Now, all the things you said, I fully agree with, and don't put the labels on them at such an early age. But what if someone was in a situation whereby maybe the child's not been speaking for quite a long time, maybe they're 2-3 years old, whatever it may be, I'm not an expert. What can they do without labeling them? Do you know what I mean? What can they do if they are worried? What is the best step to take, and if they feel like they're not getting the support?
Well, the really interesting thing, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was a really really lovely study that showed that obviously there's signs of global delay before speech, before anything like that. And it's actually all about social interaction, because we learn to speak, we learn to socialize from watching other people. So it's like every parent needs to ensure that they are being social with their baby, and with the trying to be tactful. When you go out and you see parents who are out, how many of those parents are allowing babies, toddlers, young children to be sat on smartphones at tables or put in front of a television? So this is not to blame or shame. This is just to say that children learn how to speak, they learn how to be social, they learn how to be human by modeling the people around them. So your attachment style, so how you attach to other people, is imprinted in your amygdala before you are 18 months old. So before you even realize that you're separate from your primary carer, how you attach to other people is based on your experiences from 0 to 18 months.
Wow.
So
which will then affect your dating life, your marriage, and everything else.
Everything else.
Wow.
Exactly. Everything else. And not many people know that. Maybe I should start a relationship. Relationship. So you need to understand. I do an attachment program for an amazing organisation who are called the Reese Foundation, who work with care experienced adults, so people who've been in the care system since being a child and who are now adults. And that for me has been taking people through that process for them to understand their attachment style and how they've got to where they've got to, and then realize that really there's nothing they can do. I mean, how many people would give an 18-month-old child responsibility for attachment? But the very fact that we have the mechanism that's how it works, that before you're 18 months old, your attachment shows pretty much how we should live, does it not?
Yes. Yeah. I suppose as well, if you imagine babies that were born during the pandemic because of that lack of connection,
Yeah.
that must be we must be in a few years' time when the data comes out, will be.
We don't need to do the data at the time. Honestly, I think it was at the start of this year that I realized that I've actually been in one big PTSD episode throughout the pandemic because I could not understand how such policies were allowed to pass for a virus that wasn't deadly for the vast majority of people, particularly with some of, like you say, with the children, the babies, and I couldn't believe that. I thought, where are the developmental psychologists? Why are they not saying this is bad?
Yeah.
Babies learn from the mirror neuron system if they cannot see because of this is bad.
Yeah.
We all learn from the mirror neuron system, so we learn from looking at other people. We learn from, and this is, just touching on the autism, they have difficulty in understanding some of the nuances, difficulty in interpreting it. They still have a mirror neuron system. They still need to have that. So if, like, for parents, you need to talk to your children. A television is not a parent. An iPad is not a parent. A smartphone is literally a weapon of torture. Take them off your children. It's really bad for them.
Yeah.
It's like, it made me laugh. Somebody was telling me, I think it was in one of the mainstream media, that there's like a big furore. I think there was somebody in Australia who they'd filmed a toddler vaping, right? So there was a big furore over that. And yet, there's no big furore when you go out to your local harvester or your local, you pull up to have your Sunday dinner and you see all these toddlers sat around a table with the parents' smartphone. There's no furore about that. It's similar. I mean, it's really interesting because obviously nicotine is the most addictive substance known to man. But the reward system is damaged by what children see on smartphones. Blue light is not good. Blue light doesn't help the brain to develop. So it's like, how can we have furore over one thing but not furore over another? So for any parent that, it's like, start socializing your babies from as soon as they're born. Interestingly, my research into autism wasn't my original PhD subject.
Right.
I was really interested in genetic proteins of the emotion joy, because we can map joy on a premature baby's face, which has a supposition that, it's the only emotion that we feel in utero. So it's underpinned by oxytocin. They have a look of joy when they're very close to their primary carer.
Can you map joy in an adult?
It's similar. Similar change in the face, and it's that whole connection to something other than yourself. It's got an oxytocin underlying. So I wanted to do sexy molecular biology. Sexy molecular neurobiology. Look at me, I've mapped the protein that's associated with joy. And when I was sat in somebody's lecture, and they basically said that people with autism couldn't be happy. Now, I don't like happiness because it's social constructs, but I thought, God, that's a pretty mean generalization. And then when I looked into literature and thought nobody cared about the well-being, that took me for that. But when we're talking about children, that joy, that connection,
yes,
it's something to really think about, isn't it?
Yeah, and your podcast is called Unbroken. But now the more we talk about it, I think it's the system that's broken, isn't it?
God,
it's
the system,
culture.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about people in Harvester, other pubs are available.
Other pubs are available. I don't know whether you take a tea or into Witherspoons, though.
With their iPads and things like that. And of course, when you look at it from a sympathetic view, it's kind of it's the system, isn't it? And it's the fact that it is really hard for parents now, isn't it? And with the pressure of two parents having to work or whatever it is, and the all the issues there is around what, like maternity pay and stuff like that, because it's not statutory, or the statutory is not
it's
worth.
pitiful. I think so. It's still about £140 a week, I think.
Yeah,
Tops.
it's ridiculous. And there seems to be, I feel like you're punished if you have children. And I think it's disgusting, actually. And I think we should be encouraged, because there's so much around encouragement for career and all that, and that's absolutely great. But actually, we need people to have a healthy society, and so that we don't have a population collapse in 30 years.
Well, and it's not that it's like, I think yesterday I described how we live as the world, as literally the biggest Ponzi scheme I've ever known. Is that everybody is either working hard to make somebody else rich, working hard to make somebody else powerful, or they're vilified to such an extent that people don't want to divulge that maybe they're not working, maybe they are disabled, maybe they are poorly, maybe there is something wrong with them, and they don't want to divulge that because then they're part of the shirkers, aren't they? And this is a massive part of the problem. And I've had a bit of a tumultuous time myself, like, speaking to people this week and a couple of weeks, and the toxicity that's out there around certain messaging. And like, you're still going back to familiar with the messaging. You said you wanted to do different. You said you wanted things to be different, but you're accessing the same toxicity, of LinkedIn to find people's opinions.
Yeah.
Now, if there's ever a cesspit of virtue signalers, go to LinkedIn. If you ever needed a demographic, I want the most toxic virtue signalers that I can find. Go to LinkedIn, because about 80% of the people there, that they fit that demographic.
LinkedIn or Twitter?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't comment on Twitter because
I haven't been on it for a very long time.
I don't know what Elon Musk is doing, but God knows,
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
But it's like, what do you want to achieve? You're not going to achieve it. It's like, for me, those kind of places, it's like, oh, I feel really bad about something. I haven't got the energy to change anything. So I'm just going to have a tirade on here, and I'm going to feel better when 200 people have liked it. That's addiction. That's an addiction. That's a very faulty reward system addiction.
Yeah.
What are you doing to change the world? And it's like, the system wants you to behave like that. Because then the system knows that you're behind your computer, you're a keyboard warrior, and that's all you're going to do. You're going to have a focus group, you're going to have a help group, you're going to have a day of awareness, and that's where it stops. So that's safe for the system.
Yeah.
And it's
addiction really to validation and dopamine.
Let me share something that made me cry this morning. I've had a very tumultuous day. My partner arrived back. He's up in Edinburgh most of the time, and he arrived back, and I was like, David, listen to this. Straight away, it's like, listen to this, David. And it's just like, I went, so I said, you see that these articles, these opinion pieces, and they're written by women, and they're talking about this really amazing place that women can go. They get all dressed up in hazmat suits, the protection suits, and they have like a baseball bat or something like that, and then they go into a room and they smash everything in that room up and get their anger out. And I said, and this it's meant to be like a serve. Oh, look at these women dealing with their anger in this way. And I'm just like, and nobody's saying, right? Nobody's saying, right, well, that's really normal in an abnormal. So if someone's in an abnormal environment where a woman is so angry, she needs to express it in that way. That's a normal expression, but that's not how women normally should be. Women do not have a testosterone that makes people fired up and aggressive. Women have estrogen, which makes them calm and serene. We're talking hormones here. So the very fact that this is being normalized, that women can get dressed up and go into a room and smash the shit out of it, and we're meant to celebrate that. I went, that actually makes me want to just sit down and cry, because that shows how distorted and how far away from healthy and caring and nurturing we've got to. And yeah, I cry almost daily, Jason, about just literally, I actually realized this morning that I have moral distress.
Wow.
Which is generally reserved for nurses, right?
Yeah.
Where they literally cannot treat a patient as they think that patient should be treated.
I can feel it.
Yeah, I have
I can feel it,
distress
Rachel.
because it's like I see so much pain and I cannot help everybody with it because people don't want to listen. They don't want to see the elephant in the room. They haven't got the energy for it. They're too entrenched in this nightmare dopamine addiction. They're too entrenched in Love Island. And let me ask you a question, and this is nothing to do with what I'm saying, but this will be quite interesting to get your gauge on it, right? So Jeremy Clarkson. And I was really impressed because I didn't know that it was actually a reference to Game of Thrones. I've never seen it. So when I heard about what he said about Meghan, I was like, wow, that seems a bit extreme. I didn't know it was a reference to Game of Thrones.
What did he say?
He said that she should be paraded through the streets and excrement thrown at her. Apparently that's what happened to a princess in a Game of Thrones. So it didn't really say that. Wow.
Okay. Yeah, it's a Game of Thrones reference. Do you know, I've watched it 4 times. And I probably wouldn't have, but it says more about me. I probably wouldn't have got that reference. I'm not very quick.
Well, I've never watched it, so somebody, oh, it's a Game of Thrones reference. Like, oh, right, because I was like, wow, that's very specific, Jeremy.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
and I was like, he was like, ITV came out. Oh, he's never working for us again. That's completely misogynistic.
So that's just happened recently.
I think it happened a couple of months ago.
He's out. What? Yeah. I can't keep up with Jeremy Clarkson.
In the same week, and this is what I'm interested in your take. So in the same week, so ITV came out, it's misogynistic. He shouldn't have said, he had to apologize, and he did do. He said, I didn't want to upset people with it.
You were just after intention.
Well, his editor had agreed. I think it was in the Sun or the Mirror. I don't even know which one of those in it, but it's one of those.
Oh, so it wasn't just off the cuff.
It wasn't. It was in an editorial.
Oh, it was in the Sun, and that's normally such amazing newspaper.
But so they came out and vilified him and said, we don't allow misogyny, we don't allow hate talk on ITV. And the same week, Love Island started.
Right.
How is it different?
Yeah, I mean,
how is that different?
Yeah, I understand.
This is what we're working with in the system.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because what do you do other than?
Well, this is why I cry. This is why I cry.
Yeah, it's kind of a hopeless situation in some regards.
It's double speak all the time. It's like my favorite novelist, my favorite writer is Kafka, right? And I often think, oh my God, well, we're just living in a Kafka novel right now. But obviously, doublespeak comes from George Orwell for Big Brother. Like, what is they say something and then say the opposite, and they're both the truth. So which isn't it? The brain gets confused by it. It's like, where's our parameters? What is the truth? What should I be paying attention to? So it's like you're basically waiting on a daily basis to be told, how should I behave today? What is the zeitgeist of the day? What is the influence? Who should I be virtue signaling about today? That's what it is. And that's a nice quiet loop, right? And that's why I want people to use the prefrontal cortex more.
Yes.
So you can be as arsey as you want, as long as you are thinking about it.
As you're deliberate.
As long as it's a response and not a reaction. Be as arsey as you like, but I want it to be a considered response, and that's what society to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think I mean, I understand everything you're saying, and I do feel like that at times, but I do live with hope. And one of the things that makes me hopeful is, I love podcasting.
Yeah.
I love podcasters, and that's why I started this, because I get so much, I don't know if it's joy, but I get so much kind of growth. And I know it's in my headphones and I'm not actually seeing the person or whatever, but it really can lift me out
Yeah.
of feeling kind of like weird and abnormal. I mean, where I live, we're kind of at the end of the longest cul-de-sac in the
Don't
world.
out the people where you live. You might have people with pitchforks saying, we're not like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think because when you try to it's nice because you can listen to someone on the other side of the world in America, and they might have different views. And I mean, that's always been the case in things with music when it came over, and all the rest of it. But it's nice to kind of be able to at least digitally sort of broaden your horizons, and sort of hear different, and the UK itself can be a very is it tallest poppy syndrome? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Where you get chopped down, for being a little bit, or if you're too extroverted, or if you do something or whatever. And sometimes that brings me down, and you kind of like, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to do anything kind of like out there, because you feel like you're going to be judged. But
except for that. And it was like really weird, because when after I gave this tirade about, oh God, the world is just in such a state, I then got an email from a really amazing person who I'd worked with, who was telling me in detail some of the stuff that I'd suggested that she did, and it was so beautiful and so uplifting that it had made such a difference to her life. And like my partner said, he said, it's the one people that you touch that you need to focus on, because when you work with people, he said, they always tell you that you've changed their life, and you need to focus on that. And I do, and it's really lovely. But I think there's just this, when I have a very abstract brain, and it's like I can piece together things from all over, and actually
might I ask you, are you not neurodiverse?
No, I'm not. And this is really interesting, because when I speak at conferences and there's lots of people there who are, they come and talk to me after and say that I must be, because I understand them and I speak with such passion and respect and kindness. So I must be one, because and I'm like, I always feel apologetic. I always apologize. I'm really sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, but you are, because that's denial. And we all go through that. And I'm like, I would say, looking at the autism spectrum quotient, which is Baron Cohen's offering to, diagnostics, I am highly traded in a couple of traits, but in the ones that really affect somebody with autism, so the ability, so that social dynamics, that going into a group, I can go, I don't look for what my role could be in a group. I just go to the group. I'm just it's like, there's no work me and home me. I'm just me. There's no, I'll behave differently in this context to that context. I'm just the same. So whereas I'm highly traded in things like, I like patterning. I like, when things get too much, I often count in a certain order, to help my brain just to focus on something, so my thought process doesn't get too, hyper with it. But I'm not. But I have a very abstract brain. Is that if I'm working on something, I'll often be working on 3 or 4 things simultaneously.
Wow.
And switching between.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that's
very
how
impressive.
I bring things, because I think, oh, if I do this, and this will help that, and then so it's like very organic sort of everything coming together all at the same time, even though there might be 3 or 4 separate projects. So that's what I mean when I say my brain's abstract. So when I look at the environment that we live in, and I see that something's happening with energy, something's happening with schools, something's happening with social care, something's happening with business. It's like, I don't know whether it's a blessing or a curse that I can have this overview and see how it's all part of, this systemic push that it's a zero-sum game.
Have you ever done psychedelics?
So I have. I've done San Pedro and ayahuasca.
Wow. I've not done it. I was talking to Joey about this, I feel like I'm going to get stereotyped into the psychedelics guy, but I'm just interested by it.
Yeah.
I done some stuff, but I've not done ayahuasca. And the way you were speaking then, I was like, oh yeah, like it's like that wide angle.
Yeah.
Where you can see stuff.
Right, ayahuasca. Oh, it was so, yeah, it was.
Tell me about it.
Right. So went to a tiny island north of Denmark called Fimu with the most amazing shaman called Jakob. And he had an assistant, Bob. There was me and there was my friend who came with me. And it was really interesting. I was so tired. It was actually on the solstice, winter solstice. So it was just before Christmas, and we'd like sort of arranged to go for 3 days.
Were you outside? Do you have your coats on and that? Oh.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, I was exhausted from trying to. So, like, we'd got the flight to Copenhagen, and then he was picking us up from Copenhagen to take us to the ferry and right the north to get the ferry across to Fimu. And it was all very surreal. So we get to where we're going for the ceremony, and he was preparing. We started the ceremony, and the plants hit me very hard, very quickly. I literally had taken, I drank it, and I went lying back on the mattress, and I looked at this candle in this window, and I thought, oh my God, what's that candle doing? And then I looked at the assistant, who's called Bob, into the shape. I went, I feel really sick. And he laughed.
That's a good name to have for an assistant. Because if he was called anything, Bob, I could hold on to.
Danish,
well,
and it was like, and the next thing, and this is the last thing that I can consciously remember being awake, I was literally vomiting up capitalism. Wow. I was vomiting. It was capitalism. There was all these fat cats. There was all this, and I was like, ugh. It was like I was being sick.
That's one hell of a whitey.
It was like, and I was just like, oh God, what is this? and apparently, and I wasn't aware of this, apparently I was like rubbing my hands in the vomit and then rubbing it on poor Bob. Poor Bob, I was rubbing it on him. And then I literally, I was out cold on the mattress.
Oh my word.
And the visions that I had was, when did I do it? Was it I think it was 2016. And so I can remember the visions. It's so vivid. I can't remember what year it was. It might have been 2017. Actually, it was 2017. And the visions were so vivid, and it was
good year, by the way.
Was it a good year for you?
It was a good year for me. I traveled. I was traveling for 11 months.
Oh, so I was traveling psychedelically. Yeah.
Love it.
I didn't enjoy the psychedelics. I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy it was like all I'll call it is like this demented clockwork orange scene all the time, because my mind would not let go. My mind wouldn't let go. So the first thing that the plant tried to do, it tried to make me let go of, like, I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm in a room in a place in Fimu with people I don't know. What could happen here? I put myself into such a place of danger. Then the second, and that didn't, but my mind wouldn't let go. That wasn't enough to scare me. And the second thing is I had a vision of my children leaving me, and that wasn't enough for me to let go. The only thing that actually, when I let go, was having this like clockwork orange nightmare of vivid scenes of capitalism, of people literally abusing other people and it being okay, that successful people forget what they were, and that was basically how we live. And at that point, I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I must have been around this like clockwork orange scene for at least 15, 16 times. And then I just gave up and I died. I died. But it wasn't great. Then I was in the oneness. Oh, you don't want to, it's like, oh wow. I remember saying to Joey, and he loves the oneness, Joey. I went, I have never wanted to get out of somewhere as much in my life. I found it horrendous. I think
it'd be better in the jungle, me. You want to be sweating. If you're doing that, you want to be sweating.
Well, I tell you something, Jason. I did everything else bar sweating, honestly. And this that was like I'll talk about.
I pictured yours being like dead beautiful with the Northern Lights or something like that.
It was the strangest thing is that when I was in the oneness, and I was like, I don't want to be in the oneness. And
so you're in the oneness after you died.
After I died, I was in the oneness.
Got it.
And I said, I don't want to be here. I don't like it. And the plant said to me, what do you want to see? And I went, I want to see the beginning of time. And the plant took me to see the Big Bang.
Bloody hell.
I know.
That's more intense than Coronation Street, isn't it?
I've gone goosebumpy. You can't see. This is.
I have a little bit. No, it's amazing.
When I talk about it all the time, I go goosebumpy, because I remote viewed the Big Bang and I saw everything in that moment. I saw everything.
Wow.
And it was like, in that moment, it was like you saw the futility of what was happening. You saw that people, that humans were not being human, and that if we were, everybody would be thriving.
Yeah.
It was like it was so surreal but very real at the same time. But it's not very glamorous taking ayahuasca. You wet yourself, you throw up, and it was like when I was coming round, because I was out of it. I was unconscious for all of it. From throwing up at the beginning, I was unconscious. I was very aware of music in the room. I was very aware of singing, but I wasn't conscious. And he played the same song. I was like, oh, please stop it. That was part of the Clockwork Orange. Please don't play that song again. I want to escape from this madness.
Wow.
And then when I was coming round, the shaman Jakob was leaning over me. And my friend, she was laughing so much. She said, you're in such a state. She said, at one point, I was like thinking, oh my God, are we going to have to get an ambulance? Like, she said, I was literally, you were gone. And she said, I was very relieved. And she said, you were a mess. You were covered in sick. She said, it was obvious that you'd wet yourself. She said, it was obvious that, you weren't in the best shape. She said,
that's like me if I have 3 drags of a spliff.
It's just like everything just
there
goes.
You go.
and I just remember, so I said, yeah, are you real? Are you real? I was like touching him and like laughing, it was real. And I went, oh, that's really good. And I just went, do you know later, do you fancy taking me out for a coffee? And my friend Helen, she went, you were in such a state. She said, you were flirting with the shaman, the state that you were in. I went, listen, I said, he saw me at my worst and was still actually saying to me, are you okay? I went, I thought it was fair game. I'd go for a coffee. The plant has cleansed it.
Wow.
So, and it was so profound. It was really profound. And I can, if I close my eyes, I can see the Big Bang itself.
So, are you glad you did it, and what were the benefits?
Am I glad I did? Yeah, I am very glad I did it. The benefits for me, it
wasn't like opening Pandora's box and
no. I knew that I needed to have like sort of a spiritual death, and I got that in the rebirth. And that I didn't tell you about the rebirth. That was bizarre. It was like I literally gasped for breath. I felt fluid. I felt being reborn, and it was, I looked like I'd been to war when I came round. I was so white, and I am really glad that I did it, because I had such limitations placed on me when I was very young, and for me to do this now with you and to be out in the public domain and to speak to people and to be myself, I don't think I would have been able to do that without actually going through that process, because it sort of helped me. It helped. I've never felt special in terms of a human being. I've never felt I had a very difficult childhood, and that went into sort of adulthood and everything like that. And when I came around, I knew that my purpose was important, and that not many people would see the Big Bang. Everybody has their own experience with ayahuasca. Everybody has their own experience with the plant. My experience with San Pedro has always been very violent, very violent. It's always been like Star Wars. Always good battling evil with my San Pedro. It's like that's like it's like you said, I'm a beautiful. Oh, look at that eagle. You know, oh look, there's a white stag over there. My San Pedro, it's like, Jesus Christ, how many battles do I need to have? You know, it was like never been a gentle process. I like used to have my clothes were torn. It's like, how the hell has this happened? You know, where have I been? You know, but the ayahuasca for me, it was it had to be very tough with me. It wasn't an easy ceremony, but I wouldn't have learned what I did if it had been a nice, beautiful, oh look, there's birds.
Yeah.
Like Snow White. Oh look at that dolphin over there, which is all those beautiful colours. Yeah. That would not have worked for me. But
I suppose you got your bang for your buck in some aspects, because
literally the big bang.
Yeah, the big bang for your buck.
Big bang.
See, that was totally.
You know, the overriding emotion now is that I don't want to die. I don't want to go to the oneness. I don't want to die. I don't want to go back to that place where everybody else is. I don't want to. You know the film Soul. I don't know if you've ever watched it. I was like,
which film?
Soul.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Like, I
actually really like it.
Have Pixar been in my head? So do you know, like when he's going to the oneness and he's like, no.
Yeah.
That was me, and I'm like,
wow.
Oh my God, have Pixar been in? I've been like literally downloading. That was me. I do not want to go. I don't want to go there. And I've not reconciled that. I argue with God all the time. I'm very disappointed with God. Very disappointed with him.
What is God to you?
God is like, you know, the overwhelming universal force. It's not like an anthropological, you know, oh, there's no man with a beard in the corner. It's not the Family Guy depiction of God. You know, it's not the American version of God.
Yeah,
it's like the creator, you know, the creator. And you know, I've not yet made my peace with God. So obviously I've still got lessons to learn about being godly.
Aren't we all? Well, yeah. I'm gonna take a hard left turn right now and ask if I can indulge a little bit somewhat in a more of a personal question.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm interested about, so first off, I'm sure you're aware of the middle way.
Yeah.
With the buddies talk about it.
Yeah.
And do you think that everyone can live in that manner, or do you think that some people have more of a challenge? And I'll be straight up. The reason I'm asking you this is so I got dyslexia. I don't really feel that it affects me, other than that I didn't read a book in its entirety until I was 21. And I managed to get all the way through school blagging it and no one noticing.
See, this is what I mean when I talk about masking and camouflaging. You become a master. People with neurodiversity become masters. It's like, literally, it's like, wow, it's such skill.
Do you remember them books, Goosebumps? Do you ever remember them?
Yeah.
I had them all. Never didn't read any of them. But I collected them. Oh, I love that one. Yeah, oh yeah. I would just bag my way through it. But without digressing too much. So and one of my best friends, he's really good, and he talks to me. So basically he says I'm an extremist, and I kind of am. And I tend to I can just be 100 miles an hour on one thing, or I'll go 100 miles away an hour the other way. So if I get into something, whether it's working out, I'm going to be working out every day. Or you know, but I often say, well, I believe that's my superpower, so I can go with that, and I know my limitations. But I don't know whether it's possible for someone to be able to actually live that middle way and not be an extremist, or is it just, are you just pushing too hard against the grain there? And that might be a difficult thing to ask you to comment on, but
I don't think it is. I think the thing is that so many people are prescriptive of how people should live. And I think as long as the way that you're living is beneficial to you,
Mm.
and you are well from it and you thrive within it.
I'm 11 months of the year.
So, and so maybe, yeah, maybe you have like 1 month where you just do something completely different. That's good for the brain to do completely different,
Mm.
I think sometimes there's a little bit too much around sort of the dogma that we should all live in a certain way, because we all have differences,
Mm.
genetic differences. For example, I wake up really, really early and do my best work in the morning. Some
Mm.
people struggle to do that. They do their best work in the afternoon, and that's when I'm ready to just clock off. That's the
Mm.
difference that you have to work with. You know when you're best. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes, if somebody's looking for a different way of living, is it that they're really unhappy with how they're living, or is it they think they should be unhappy with how they're living because someone's told them that? Someone's told them, oh, you shouldn't live like that. You should live like this. So
Yeah.
so for me, it's people need to explore what's good for them and what makes them feel better. It's your life, it's your experience, and it's not for anybody else to dictate how that experience should
Mm.
be.
It's
And
getting that balance, isn't it, between feedback and what works for you. And I suppose at times, like, it can feel quite lonely, it being within, and you'll connect with this, I'm sure, being the way that you operate. So, I'm kind of like, I need things, and I'm going to tick off all the boxes every day, and I'm going to be great. But I might fall off the wagon big style for a few
yeah,
days.
yeah,
My house is always really tidy,
yeah.
or it will go crazy for
Yeah.
like a few days, and then I'll get back on the tidy wagon, shall we say.
But how does that affect you?
I feel like when my house is really untidy, it's everything goes with it. So I'll also be more depressed or sad. I use that term.
Yeah.
I don't struggle with depression. I get it.
Yeah,
Like
it's like
everyone
people
does to
call
an
it
extent.
depression. It's just like,
Yeah,
no, it's
exactly.
not.
So it's a
It's just
label, isn't it?
you're a bit fed up.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah, it's usually a good reflection of where I'm at. If I start to,
What I would be asking then, I would be saying, so what purpose does being messy bring to your life? Because it will. There'll be a positive intention behind it.
let me see how much I enjoy being organized.
So if there's a purpose, so if you're finding that not useful, why don't you just say, well, what other ways can I explore being organized that I don't need to have my house messy? Because presumably it takes you a little bit of energy and time that you could be spending on other things. So like say, how else could I express my need to be organized? I don't need to let things get messy. What else could I need to do?
It's not that I need for it to get messy. It just happens.
No, there will be a need behind it. And this is the interesting thing about the reward system. Is that if I say to you, right, what's the definition of reward? What is your definition of a reward? What is it?
Definition of reward is
Yeah, I'm not trying to trip you up. I promise I'm not trying to trip you up. All right, give me the generalized.
It's a gift that you give to yourself after doing a task.
Right, that's not how the brain sees reward.
No.
Right, so you have a need, an internal need, an emotional, often that's shown with an emotion or some sort of feeling to have that need, and the reward is whatever action you do to meet that need.
Right.
So in this case, your reward is not cleaning the house.
No.
That's the reward, because that's the behavior that follows that your need to be organized. So you have to look at what is a better behavior to meet that need.
Yeah.
So people get reward, and this is why people get in all sorts of problems. But it's like reward is really interesting because people, and again we're going back to the old limbic system. People are manipulated into buying things, doing things, experiencing things in order to meet a need. So it's like, oh, if you feel pain, take this. If you want to look like you're successful, buy this. If you want to be cool, drink Bacardi. Can you see how it works? And like, so the need is, I want to be cool.
Yeah.
I want to be the coolest cat in the group. So then, what's the easiest way of doing it? I'll buy Bacardi. That's not going to make you feel cool. That's actually going to make you really drunk and ill. And that's fine as long as I want to feel drunk, I want to feel out of control, and I want to get messy. If those are the drivers, great, Bacardi's your answer. But the need is to be cool. And somebody's had that influence, put in, I can look like that. I can be like that. I can be treated like that if I drink Bacardi. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is why we have very messed up need and reward systems. And that's why it's, especially when it's like alcohol and drugs, and, it alters the protein expression, and it's very difficult for the brain. It's like becoming an addict isn't a disease. That's a behavior choice.
Yes.
But addiction is a disease because it changes the structure of the brain. Does that make sense? But even when I sort of say it, it's like, but when you look at the choice that someone has made to, have the first drink, or have the first heroin shot, whatever is their drug of choice, it's like you look, and what they want to do is desperately change their reality as quickly and as cheaply as possible.
Yes.
That is their driver. That is a motivation for it. I want to change my reality as quickly as possible. And that's how
yearning for something different.
Yeah, it's like, well, when you look at most people who have addiction problems, they're not like, there's a lot in the media about this emerging group of people with addiction problems who are middle class workers. And it's just like the majority of people with addiction issues are still people who have been traumatized, still people who have been deprived, still people who live in poverty, still people who have no internal resources or external resources. And when you look at that, it's like, what choice do they really have? It's very, minimal. And, it's like, that's not becoming the addict is not a disease. It's not like, you can catch it, you're an addict. It's like, but when you are addicted, then your brain has changed structure and your proteins are expressed differently. And I think that you can cause then a condition or a disease. So but going back to your particular thing, it's like, if your need is to be organized, then your reward by making things messy, allowing things to become messy so then you can organize them, that makes perfect sense.
So you think I'm doing it on purpose?
Subconsciously, it's not. It's just a thing.
Well, and often, sometimes it's just because I get busy. You have a busy day, and then you can't. But
this is really interestingly, is that if your brain wants its priority to be organized, and then you're not, when you suddenly become, you've allowed, this mess has happened, then that's going to be a pretty big alarm. I bet you get anxiety if things are not organized.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
it's less than anxiety. It's more, I think it's more shame, actually.
Well, but what's the mechanisms behind? What do you feel?
I feel like I'm not a proper adult. I feel like I'm a little boy who hasn't cleaned up his toys. I'm going to get in trouble.
You're not being a grown-up, are you? Because you're being
no.
God, you'd hate to see my desk right now. I hate my desk right now. It's a good job you can't see it. You'd go, oh my God, what is that?
Do you know, I was thinking it'd be interesting. Yeah, I could do, like, look how clean this all looks. You should see what I'm surrounded by. It's,
I know you look very clinical there with your nice little pot plant and your neutral background.
Yeah, honestly, it's hideous. What can I say? I've had a very busy day.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then when you need to be organized, it's like that. For me, I'd be exploring I'd be mind mapping what organization means to you. Because you might get some really interesting things popping up.
I think it's because I feel like I make better decisions in a tidy environment if the environment's untidy, I start to make untidy decisions. Impulsive, more likely to eat bad.
Yeah.
Or to get a beer or whatever.
You're at your slippery slope.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've got yesterday's newspaper on the table, slippery slope.
Yeah. Watch out.
Yeah. And it's like many people like that. Do you know what really bugs me though? When people, when they say, like somebody who's excessively tidy, oh, I've got OCD. I find that so disrespectful for people who have got OCD.
Yeah.
So disrespectful. It's like, no, you've not got OCD. Yeah. Who's going to die if you don't clean up?
Yeah.
What rituals do you have to do while you're cleaning up? What compulsions do you have to do over and over again in order to think that somebody's not going to die? That is OCD.
Yeah.
Being excessively tidy, that's not OCD.
Sure.
That's just a control thing,
Yeah.
I'm going to say just a control thing. That's not to minimize it, but it's not a cognitive distortion.
I suppose, yeah. It's a bit of a spectrum, is it not?
Well,
like sometimes I would have to, I'd have this routine, right, when I used to go to one of my jobs, and I'd make the cups of tea in the morning, and I'd do the same way, and I'd have this thing where I use the kettle to put a bit of boiling water on the spoon to sterilize it before it goes into the cup. But some days, as a bit of a challenge, I'd go wild and I'd just shove it in the cup without sterilizing it. And that would be like a weird kind of challenge to break me out of that habitualness.
Yeah, if you had
not
OCD,
that I'm suggesting that's OCD.
yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that. That is order. That is order in the brain. And if you like cleaning and and in these offices, who wouldn't sterilize the spoon? You were dicing with death there.
I'm all for sterilizing the spoon.
You were dicing with death, not sterilizing that spoon.
Yeah.
I'm only joking.
I've worked with some absolute barbarians.
Have a spoon then, otherwise you'd be like using a biro.
Yeah. I'd just bring my own in, but I'd still sterilize it because it's been in the bag. Should we talk about grief?
Yeah, let's talk about grief. yeah, let's.
Was that smooth?
Yeah, it was.
I have a theory. Do you want to hear my bro science?
Yeah, go on.
So, I've noticed that if the people who I have, what's the word? Repeated dreams about, recurring dreams, sorry, not necessarily dead, but I tend to have the same people popping up over and over again from my past or wherever. And then I've come to the realizations that I believe it's open loops. So they could be like ex-girlfriend's parents, people I went to uni with, people who died, and people who I don't see anymore, but we never said goodbye.
Yeah.
And they seem to pop up over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it almost a form of grief, and the brain is trying to close that loop? That's my bro science. What do you think?
Well, Jung, who is my favorite psychologist, would have a lot to say around what symbols are within those dreams along with the people. Why have you not tried to say goodbye in different ways apart from dreams, if you think that's what the grief is there something that you might want to hold on to? I mean, the reason why we grieve is because we have attachments, and because the brain is quite selfish in death, in terms of when we witness death. It wants us to remember things because it wants us to know how to avoid that for ourselves. So we'll remember nuances, we'll remember specifics within that, and it's
how to avoid.
Yeah, the brain doesn't want
getting too attached again.
No. So the brain. So we agree because we're attached to people. But the reason why we remember things in such clarity is because the brain, our brain, its job is to keep us alive. It doesn't contemplate death. Its job is to keep us alive, no matter what. It wants to keep us alive. So if it witnesses death, it wants you to notice what's going on, wants you to remember in clarity so that you can avoid the same thing happening to you. And it's as simple as that is why we remember certain things about death, and why we might see somebody wearing the same coat as the person who died last night, and like, oh my God, it's just like them. And that's what the brain job. That's the limbic system. The limbic system does that. And if you're having recurring dreams around certain people, do you want to keep having these dreams, or do you want to have closure?
Oh, interesting one. Some are fairly neutral, although I tend to enjoy the dreams because they're always like, it's seen you in ages, and we always talk it out.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then some, yeah, I might as well share it. So I was a step parent for a while. And so I was in her life like 2 till 5. And unfortunately I don't see anymore because me and mother aren't together. So that's a weird one for me to reconcile, because it's like a death.
Yeah, but they're still alive.
And same thing, never had any closure.
Yeah.
Dropped off at school one day. That was it.
Yeah.
Just happened. We ended up breaking up and whatever. And I respect the decision from her mother to, she did what she believes is right for the child or whatever. But yeah. And that was like 2 years ago. And I used to think about it all the time. It's less so now. It's not every day. But it's still, obviously you can probably tell that it still affects me. And I still have the dreams quite a lot. So yeah, do I want to still keep having the dreams? But possibly, but they're kind of torture as well, because, and I'm sure you've had this yourself, where you're in a dream with someone who's passed, and you're hugging them or whatever, and then you wake up and you go, oh, fuck's sake, it's just a dream.
Yeah. No, sadly, I don't have nice dreams like that. I dream about alien invasions, that kind of thing.
Oh, horrendous. Wow.
Horrendous. Yeah.
Fascinating though, aren't they, dreams? Yeah.
Well, I had a spate of dreams where I literally got murdered in my dreams, and I had the sensation of dying. They were really disturbing.
Wow. I sometimes have night terrors. And they're incredibly intense and quite dangerous. So I used to have them more like a few years ago, and then I stopped having them for quite a while, and I've just picked up again recently, which is interesting because it tells you exactly where you're at in terms of your stress levels, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And like the other night I woke, and I have my bedroom pitch black, obsessively so, I like my sleep and all the rest of it. And
your hypothalamus will thank you.
Yeah. And I woke, right, so I'm in a dream but I'm not, so, and basically it feels completely real, and I'm trying to climb out of this like just thing, like the walls were just like so high and I couldn't get out. I then realize I'm stood on my bedside table.
Wow.
In the corner of the room. Yes, it's pitch black, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Wild. And then I have to like get down and then like try and like come back to baseline and then go back to sleep. Mental.
Have you ever kept a dream journal?
I did for a little while, yeah. And then you stop doing it after a bit. But yeah, I probably because then you think, what's the benefit in this or whatever? Yeah. So
well, the benefit is that you're looking for patterns, because that's what the dream is. What the dream is sort of the brain making sense, making patterns out of your experiences. So you might want to you can look and see what recurring themes are. You can look and see if there's any symbols. And if you have really vivid dreams, what you can try to do is, when you're going to sleep, try imagining your hands in a dream And then when you're in the dream, if you see your hands, you can start to control the dream.
Oh, it's like lucid dreaming. I actually can do a little bit of that.
There you go. So you want to do more of it then?
Like if sometimes I'll get like a dream where like I've been kidnapped or there's some just bad guys or whatever, and I'm really scared and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I go, this must be a dream. And then I just start absolutely like flipping about and kicking them in the face, and it's like this, and it's like my little movie. It's really it's dead fun. And I'm like jumping off stuff and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you need to read Carlos Castaneda. Castaneda. Yeah. And specifically, you need to read The Art of Dreaming. And the Wheel of Time. There's a whole. It's about. He was an anthropologist in America in 1950s, and he went to study with a shaman called Don Juan. And learning all about energy and stuff like that. So you read I know you said that you don't really like reading.
No, I love reading. So I'm an avid Audible.
Oh right, well I reckon you could get them on Audible then. But honestly, well worth.
And I do like reading. It's just difficult. But yeah, Audible.
And understanding about dreams, understanding about energy, understanding about different dimensions.
Wow.
Definitely.
That sounds cool.
It's very cool. Yeah. I'm such an abstract neuroscientist. I like esoteric, I'm like cutting edge. I'm like, I watch behavior, and I also bring in, a bit of the abstract to it.
I love it. Right. So we've got a few different directions we can go in now. I'm going to give you some topics and you can select one, maybe two if we've got time. But yeah. Okay. Eugenics. Black pill stroke Inceldom. Embarrassment.
God, I feel like I'm on a Black Mirror episode.
That's just my dreams.
Incidentally, the worst Black Mirror episode is 15 Million Merits.
Which one's that one?
It's the one where they're all on a bike in that big warehouse, and the only way out is to get on the talent show, but you have to pay to get on the talent show. Oh, it's just, and it's like,
I don't think I've seen that. Do you know, I've watched some of them, and it's like, it's such a roller coaster, isn't it? Because they'll do one that's kind of like a bit light and kind of really enjoyable, and that was kind of, and then you stick one on the next night after you have your tea or whatever.
It traumatizes you.
It's really heavy, and then you're like, you just don't know what it's going to come. So I can't decide, like, do I love it or do I really despise watching Black Mirror? It's just like,
yeah, it gives me nightmares.
It's like that Pandora's box thing, isn't it? It's like you kind of do want to see.
Yeah. So let's think of it. Right, we'll start with eugenics. The thing is, on paper, social engineering should work, right? So let's just take the science out. Let's just presume for 1 minute that we could get the science right. So, and there'd be no repercussions. There's no side effects. We can do it. People are not harmed. So let's just imagine that. So social engineering. It's like, who decides what is acceptable in society and what's not? Because I love difference. I even, like, somebody said to me once, like, so why don't you just tell people how to be? Like, why is your formula like you do this and everyone can do this? I went, because that's not how I want people to be. I want to explain to people this is how their body works, this is how their brain works, and they can choose who they want to be because it's their life. And it was like, well, what if someone's really extreme? I went, this is really interesting, because what I found is that the more you give people permission to be extreme and you don't embarrass them, you don't shame them, you don't guilt them, they become more moderate. They actually become more middle ground. But it's
because of that natural pushback, or
it's like so they start to open. You like say to somebody, well, just accept yourself as you are. This is who you are, and if this is who you want to be, then you will
So
be
you
all right.
remove that tension.
Yeah, and then they tend to get a little bit more moderate. So it's like for social engineering, even though I have been guilty of saying if I was in charge of social engineering, things would look a lot different. But who's to say that I'm right? Who's to say that my utopian vision is for everybody? So, that's from like sort of the social aspect of everything. From a scientific aspect of everything, oh God, where'd you start? Gene therapy. When we have one success story, right, there's literally tens of thousands of people who it's not worked for. It's not sensitive enough. It's not individualized enough. It's like gene therapy should be individual medicine because we all have a different genetic makeup. Apart from identical twins, then they could share genetic therapy. Everybody else should have their own. Should have their own. This is your therapy, whatever that may be. But it doesn't. It's not accurate enough. Yeah, it's not. I don't think that they don't know enough about it. The vectors where they deliver it, they don't know enough about the vectors. They tend to use viruses, tend to naturalize viruses so they're not harmful, and because viruses are very successful at getting inside cells. But it's like when I was doing molecular biology prior to my PhD research, because I wanted, obviously going back to it, I wanted to do my own. I wanted to enjoy genetic, with proteins. So I did I did 3 molecular biology courses so that I could be up with the techniques and understanding. And a lot of that was around sort of genetic interventions, and it was like they're just not there yet.
Sure.
Hearing the news, and I know there's been a big conference going on this week about the ethics of it. They want to, they want the government, the UK government, to alter the ethics around genetic therapies in this country. But obviously, there's a huge conversation, and probably they'll have people who are set against it, people who are all for it, and people in the middle. And that's like a conversation when you're considering all sides. But it's really difficult because they tend to use plant models and animal models before they use human models. There's very strict guidelines on how far an embryo can go, and you can test it. Very strict guidelines, so that you've got a very short life of I think it's up to a blastocyst. I don't think it's anything beyond a collection of cells. And human beings are not mice. Human beings are not rats. Human beings are not fruit flies. We share a lot of the genetic similarities, but we are not those models. It's like, how do you produce something that is...
Have they done anything on humans?
Yeah, there was a Chinese scientist who...
I was going to say, I thought they'd done something in China.
Yes, there has. And he was not allowed to do... He wasn't supposed to do it, but he did it.
Just went rogue.
Yeah, just went rogue. Yeah. So...
I'd choose another state to go rogue in, to be fair.
Well, things like that, he doesn't seem to have been punished for it. He's...
That's interesting.
Still making comments. He's not actually remorseful for what he did. He's remorseful for how the news came out.
Right.
So not remorseful for what he did. So it's interesting.
And what happened with...
Well, the baby was born. So...
And do we know anything about the baby? Right.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, won't we?
Yeah. It's something I don't really know much about it. I heard some stuff about it recently, and it did pique my interest. And it's kind of like, because I suppose the social argument is that we do it anyways in the way that we select partners, you know, certain traits or whatever. We've been doing it for
Mhm.
millennia or whatever. But yeah, and am I right in saying that with IVF you get the choice, so you can choose from,
Well, they
but it's not
fertilize.
editing.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
not
difference,
editing. Yeah,
right?
it's not
Yeah,
editing.
yeah.
And it's really interesting because I think, nowadays you can choose to pay extra and have like the sperm go through special viscous fluids so that
Hmm.
you really do get the strong ones who reach the
Right.
end.
Oh
So you,
wow, that's
yeah,
interesting.
it's really interesting because obviously if you just like put sperm in a petri dish and with an egg, it's like,
Oh
there's none of the environmental conditions that,
yes.
in a vagina or a uterus or anything, fallopian tubes or anything like that, then you might not necessarily get the strongest, fittest sperm. But
That is fascinating.
if it's going through liquid,
I'd never thought about that.
yeah,
Wow.
many people don't. Yeah,
Do you know, and sometimes what I say to people, like if they're ever feeling a little bit down or they got imposter syndrome or whatever,
yeah,
I just say, well, just remember that race that you did when you were sperm, you did
yeah,
bloody well. So
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah. It's an extreme environment there. It is.
I think everyone should have a trophy on the wall for that one.
Oh,
We do,
well,
and it's called life.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so cheesy. But just things like say where did they start? Oh, they might start with, oh, we'll start with someone who has an extra chromosome, and we can edit that out.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe that's useful. Then parents are not going to go through the sadness of realizing that there's a genetic abnormality in their baby that it might not survive birth. So yeah, so just
Sure.
that's great, isn't it? That's great.
Hmm.
And they go, yeah, but I've already got 3 green-eyed children. I want a blue-eyed child. Oh yeah, we can do that. How's that going to harm anybody? And you get like the boiled frog effect.
Yeah,
Where,
it's like it's having those
where's the end?
boundaries and how much
Yeah.
is too much.
And then, do we end up in a position where our gene pool is really limited because we only like, let's use a Nazi formula, blue-eyed, blonde-haired babies,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Where does it end?
yeah.
And isn't not, yeah, we do have tragedies, in particular with genetic mutations.
Hmm.
Who knows why they happen? Nobody knows why they happen. It
Yeah.
just happens at times. And this is the thing, there's no blame, it's just part of life. But
Mm.
equally part of life is joy. And if
Yeah.
we don't experience tragedy, how do we know what joy feels like?
Yeah.
You make everything very meh, you know?
Sort of reductive. Mm.
Very reductive. It's very
Yeah.
reductive. So like on paper, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we can get, a whole country of like-minded people? Then I'm not going
Mm.
to be angry or frustrated or triggered, and I'm not going to cry in the morning because now women think it's okay to go into a room and smash it up, and that's what womanhood is now, you know.
Yeah.
But is
Do you know,
it?
it's a weird one, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, would I don't, would I, and I don't have a disability or anything, but if there was just a way to edit out a certain thing I didn't like about myself
Yeah.
to have a slightly easier life, but
Oh,
it's
did
that
you
whole,
not see the Star Trek episode, which was Star Trek Voyager,
mm,
where B'Elanna Torres, who was Klingon, half Klingon,
mm-hmm,
was having a baby with Tom Paris, who was human,
mm-hmm,
and she got pregnant. She was having a baby, and she genetically altered her baby to be pure human
okay,
because she thought having Klingon was negative, that she
mm-hmm,
was impulsive, she was angry, she was aggressive, and she altered the baby. And Tom Paris went absolutely insane at her. And he said, those bits of you that you hate about yourself are the bits that I admire you the most for. And I want our daughter to have
mm,
those traits. So who are we to decide what is the good or best or bad about us?
yeah, that's such a good point. And
Mhm.
I think, yeah, and what I was going to say as well was that I don't think I think I like the challenges. I
Yeah,
think I like the differences as much as
yeah,
it's difficult at times,
yeah,
and because you're just like, bring it on, Come on,
Yeah.
let's have it.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and I think the important thing is it's like sort of touching a bit on what I was saying about, you know, the gene therapy around PTSD, and certainly when you do research with people who have got bipolar, and you say, would you want it taken away? And they'll go, no, I wouldn't want it taken away. And it's like, I have complex PTSD, would I not want to have it? And it's like, who would I be if I didn't have that capacity to understand people who are in pain? You know, what would I be doing? And it's like it's important to recognize that it's a part of who you are.
Yes.
But it doesn't define who you are. You might be, you know, Jason, who is incredibly organized, but also he has dyslexia, so sometimes he needs help to decipher words because it's just too hard of a background. But you know, you are so much more than both those things. That's just two elements of you. But you're so much more besides. And it's like, you know, we all have the capacity to be mean. We all have the capacity to be nasty. We all have the capacity to have all these so-called negative emotions. But we also are so much more than that. And that's humanity. And we need to celebrate that and not vilify ourselves.
Yeah. Is it that's that Leonard Cohen quote, the cracks in everything, that's where the light gets in?
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you don't take me to the oneness, I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to one of these other topics? Because the one I've been thinking about is the black pill incel. Do you know anything, like, are you familiar with that whole?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I read this letter that someone had asked, like an agony aunt, who said that they were an incel, but they actually had lots of female friends, which was quite a paradox.
Well, I suppose that could be like the guy that gets friend zoned.
Yeah, friend zoned all the time. But
yeah, but how can you be did you say it was an incel?
Yeah.
Because don't incel hate women or something?
Yeah. So that's what I was really confused about. And I thought, well, maybe, you know, again, it's like, so obviously incel, involuntary celibate. Maybe you can be simultaneously an incel, an involuntary celibate, and it doesn't necessarily have to have misogyny attached to it. But we tend to blame the women for their involuntary celibacy.
I suppose because the reason I say black pill stroke inceldom, and I wasn't sure on the black pill is the ideology, inceldom is the type of person.
Yeah, that type of person. That's what I mean. So, but what comes first, the person or the ideology?
I think so. Yeah, I think you could. Yeah, maybe you could be an incel.
Are you drawn to the ideology because you've been rejected by women, or do you have the ideology and decide that you want to deliberately make yourself so that women reject you? It's really interesting, because all ideology, you have to sort of look and think, what is the purpose for it? What is somebody getting out of this? Why is this attractive to them? And is it attractive to someone to think it's nothing to do with me and it's everything to do with the opposite sex, and it's their fault?
Yeah.
You know, and it's almost like sort of saying, you know, that somebody deserves to get raped because of what they're wearing, or somebody deserves to get burgled because they left the door unlocked. Someone deserves to have the car pinched because they forgot to lock the car, you know, or they've parked a lovely fancy car in a deprived area, so they deserve for that car to get pinched, you know. It's like with all ideology, it's you have to sort of think, what is the purpose behind this? What's it trying to do? And if you have somebody who's an incel, do they want to actually understand why they might be repugnant to women? Or is it just that they've not repugnant to women, they've just not been in the right place to meet the right person?
They've just not had the right mentors or the right...
And it's just like, but what do you want? Do you want to remain an incel? Well, crack on with that ideology. That's going to work for you all day long if you want to remain in that. And who are we to say what people should do? But if they don't, if they want to meet a significant other, then they're going to have to change themselves to make them less frightening, make them less opinionated, make them less extreme, make them less black and white. So it depends what they want the outcome to be, surely, because we can't, can we go around telling people who's to be? Should we? That's, an interesting concept in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's, I mean, I definitely, you can you can see why it's happened, because everything is just, with online dating and everything now, and it seems
Just so
like,
toxic. The whole environment is
yeah,
toxic. People have forgot how to connect.
Yeah.
It's just awful. I look and I just think, how is this going to end? Not well. But it's like, just the influences that are out there. And if all somebody can do is going back to that TikTok of hell, if you get dragged down the rabbit hole and you're given images over and over again that convince your brain that that's the truth. And it's like, for all these men who are incels, what relationship did they have with the mother?
Yes.
Because that often is where the problems have started. How were they treated as a little boy? How were they treated?
I think there's real issues around masculinity and
massive issues. Yeah.
I mean, I actually believe I don't agree with some of the stuff around the way that masculinity is what's the word, reviled somewhat, because I think there is healthy masculinity, and
we need more good male role models.
Yeah, and I think we're just lacking role models, and this is why I turn to podcasts quite a lot, because I can find and like everyone does. I mean, the whole Andrew Tate thing, you can see why he has that appeal. Do you know who he is? Yeah.
I know who Andrew Tate is, and like, interestingly, and this is like, it's not straight. It's like the same thing with charisma. It's like, how does one man convince millions of soldiers to get behind him and go to war? Say, you're probably going to die, but come on, join me. It's the same mentality.
Yes.
It's like it's giving a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And I think for lots of boys, lots of young men, I think it's so they don't even know how to be men anymore. I think it's just, you can't say the wrong thing. And this is, and it goes back to intention. It's like, why would you get so upset with someone for saying something wrong if their intention wasn't to upset you? They've basically not understood, or they've basically said the wrong word. Why do you have to make such a big? It's like, say, well, I wouldn't quite put it like that. What were you meaning by that? Let's work. Let's so, and then it's like, not going to end up in tragedy, is it?
Yeah.
It's like really concerning, because I have a little boy myself, it's and for him, he's got two sisters.
Yeah.
A big sister who's 13 years older than him, and a little sister who's 13 months younger than him. Right. And then he has me as a mother. And it's like, poor him, it's like, I really strive to find positive male role models that he can look at and think, that's what a man is.
You should take him to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Well, he likes football, and it's so toxic.
Well, at least he's in a team sport.
Yeah.
But I always think, so I did a little bit of jiu-jitsu and then I got injured, and I'd like to go back or whatever, but I thought that would be an amazing thing to get into. Discipline, connection, control. Respect. Yeah. And like, I feel like if everyone knew jiu-jitsu, I mean, they'd not to choke each other out, but I feel like there's
that's the last resort, though, isn't it? It's like, you go for everything else before you choke them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're actually, we don't go full out choking straight away.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting, and I'm not a feminist, and I'm going to get lynched for saying that if I start getting hate letters and hate me emails. And I just hope people
you can't get cancelled if you're not on socials.
Oh, it's so funny. My daughter's boyfriend laughed because I was on GB News a couple of months ago. And he went, "Oh my God, I think you're the only person to go on GB News who's never been cancelled." I'm not on anything. I can't really get cancelled off Substack, can I? Because I write that. So
what were you talking about on?
Oh, I was talking about the Queen's death, and
really,
I
didn't expect that.
No, it was very interesting, and this, the outpouring of grief, and and I was like, they tried to put a name to it. I know, no, that's not. And I was just like, people are in pain because of the pandemic, and it's a very real and acceptable way of showing this pain. And I said, but I said, you know, people are real and they've been treated really badly, and now it's like they're being given permission to grieve something openly. So you're going to get a lot of transference, you're going to get a lot of projection. It was very difficult for me to be so diplomatic and tactful,
I'm sure,
in a subject which I was you know, I interestingly, I did some presentations on the neurology of grief for an organization around Christmas, and quite a lot of people who were accessing the help of that organization had parents, siblings died during the pandemic, not from COVID, but from other things. And the trauma that they suffered from not being able to comfort their loved ones, to have a normalized death, a normalized setting, and to not have this celebration in a funeral after it. They had developed PTSD because of that. They hadn't got trauma before that event, and it just, you know,
we went through it. It was horrendous.
It makes you cry that for what? You know, and especially I'm like, and I think this is why I've been so upset about the environment this week. It's like, I wrote copious amounts of emails and letters to various departments, various MPs during the pandemic, and said, what are you doing? This is morally wrong. You are literally poisoning a whole population with fear, with anxiety. This went well. And I got such trite, you know, comments back, and I'm like, I'm a professional. I'm like an expert in the brain and the nervous system. And then you read all of these WhatsApp messages where they knew what they were doing, they knew what they were, they deliberately did it. Why are people not writing in the streets? They deliberately did it. You know,
because they were quashing them as well.
No, that's what I mean. Now it's like, why is it not so? It doesn't seem. It's like, where's the mechanisms to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Well, that's and they're trying to take that away, and with all the, you know, the laws
with Brexit, with
anti-protest laws and stuff,
exactly.
Which is terrifying, isn't it?
And it's like, and this is the thing, and the one thing, you know, you talked about hope. I don't really like hope. I don't like hope.
But don't forget, you know, I would imagine if you were in World War II, or if you were Native Americans when all the Europeans were coming over, that was the end of the world. And I think that's why sometimes it's so easy to get swept up and feel like everything's coming to an end. But perspective, you know, we've got to be grateful for what we have.
Well, the thing is, see, I don't know. I like to say that I appreciate the people that I come across that renew my faith in humanity, because they're few and far between, but it's nice to see them when I do.
And that's all you can do.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It really is. And it's just like, you know, you see people, you hear from people, and, you know, you come across people and you think, wow, you know, you have a different perspective, you have a different way of looking at things. This is really interesting. And it just, not everybody is that brain dead, dopamine addicted, Love Island, domino pizza eating slob who literally is just passive and being nasty to everybody else.
Yeah.
We still have the people who literally are the shining lights. And that's what
But we have to believe in those people too. Because they have we have to believe in them.
This is the thing about eugenics as well. If we don't have people to blame, what kind of government are we going to have?
That's a question I have.
We have to have a dictatorship or a totalitarian state, because that's the only way they could keep order. Because right now we have so much division, where a vast majority of society blame another part of society and they blame another part of society. So we have all this division. So we don't come together. If we don't have division, because everybody is the same, so everybody who do we blame? Who do we blame for the wrongs in society? You can't. There's no one to blame. The government can't blame anybody because everybody's the same. So they have to be totalitarian. We have to live in a police state. That's another argument against eugenics.
Yeah. I heard someone say the other day on a podcast, and it wasn't that tongue-in-cheek, and he just said they'd just edit out the Y chromosome.
Wow.
So that's for all you feminists out there.
Wow.
Which is wild. I mean, kind of makes sense, other than the fact that it's disgusting.
Interestingly, in times of stress, interestingly, from a biological perspective, women are more likely to spontaneously abort, to have a miscarriage of male fetuses, because male fetuses are not able to cope with stressful environments.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is a biological fact.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Male fetuses are a lot more weaker than female ones.
Right.
Boys need a lot more nurture. They need a lot more interaction. They need a lot more cuddles, and the less independent.
They certainly do.
And that's what we need to do. We need to whip that rhetoric on its head. Like, oh, don't be a girl, don't cry. And it's like, boys need nurture. They need emotional support. They need love.
Yeah.
Then they can be men.
I do feel as well, though, like sometimes it's this balancing act as well. But then there's sometimes it's like, get yourself together. Come on. Let's like you like, I feel sometimes I wish I had more of that in my life. But then I don't know, maybe I have had it and I just didn't respond to it. But that kind of just like, I was thinking about having "Stop Being a Fanny" tattooed on me.
That's really offensive.
Oh God, it is. Is it? Oh, I never really think of it like that. But of course, that's not my intention.
Stop being a dick.
Yeah, but dick sounds. Yeah, stop being a wet kipper.
Stop being a dick.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, but I think it makes sense.
Maybe not. Maybe sometimes it's just like, it's not about that. It's just about, don't let yourself be distracted. Keep your focus. Keep your eye on the
Yeah, I mean, it's different ways of saying it, isn't it? It's like, get out of your own way.
Well, yeah, but I'm really big on words. Words are really important to me. So it's really important. Like my partner, he says I'm like very pedantic, but I will want him to use the right word to describe something. And if he doesn't, I'll say, no, that's not the right word. That doesn't mean that. And I find it really important, like language and stuff like that. So, and like for me, it's like using, sort of like, almost like, I can see like you're doing yourself down, but in a jokey way. The brain doesn't see it as a jokey way. So it's like, literally, keep your eye on the prize. I'm not one for like, it's all about the journey, man. I'm not one of those. It's like, if you want to do, you have to recognize that if you want to achieve something, it's not easy. It's not just I hate pseudo psychology. I hate the law of attraction. I hate stuff like that. It sets people up to fail. Because let me tell you, if all I had to do was think positively, I'd be like, sorry, I need to go meet Tom Hardy now.
Yeah.
I need to go meet Tom. We're going for drinks in London. That doesn't happen. It's like, when we want to do something, it's difficult. It's hard. It's worth it if we want to do it. So
it's that applying that forward motion, isn't it?
That motivation, which is a prefrontal cortex function.
Motivation is overrated. Use discipline instead.
Well, motivation you need motivation to start with the discipline. You need to be motivated before you have discipline. But it's not a cognitive function. You need to have energy in your brain. That's what you need to do. If your brain isn't energized, you've got no motivation.
Before we go, what's next for Dr. Rachel?
What's next for me? I just want to create a better and kinder world. Like, and I know, like, for everything I say, for me personally, I'm going to have to, when I say that my mantra is one brain at a time, I need to accept that one brain at a time is enough. That's enough. So for me, it's that acceptance that if you've helped someone to create their own better and kinder world, then that's something pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I think that's pretty good. And if people want to find out more about you, drracheltaylor.com.
No, I'm just on Substack.
Okay.
I don't even have a .com, so it's like I did used to have a .co.uk, but I don't use that anymore. I just use.
Gotcha.
I'm just on Substack.
So find you on
So you find me at
Substack.
Dr. Rachel Taylor on Substack. That's it. You'll
Yeah,
find me there.
and
And the Unbroken podcast, which you'll find on Spotify and Apple iPlayer.
yeah, awesome. All right, Rachel, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right.
It's been a joy.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.